Welcome, Mage. I'm Rhino, and today we're going to immobilize commanders.
And really, we don't want to immobilize every commander. We want to immobilize problematic commanders. And we'll get into those in just a moment. But before we do that, for that top 10 that we're going to do, I want to tell you a quick story. And where Rhino got started. So he was 9 years ago ish. So he was 9. And he started playing around M15, and it was Zendikar Rising, and there was one of the Friday Night Magics that he was in tears afterwards because he would just say, "There's nothing I can do against this. It's just, I mean, it comes in, it's indestructible." It was Ulamog.
Among the ceaseless hunger.
So yeah, it's Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. It's indestructible. When it enters, you destroy 2 permanents, and when it attacks, you mill 20 cards. And he was just in tears because everybody was playing this. And I said, well, if you have a problem with that, you have to find a way around it. He's like, there's no way around it. It's indestructible. Well, I showed him one card. That card was
Return to Frog.
So return to Frog. Until end of turn, target creature has loses all abilities and becomes a blue frog that has a power and toughness of 1/1. So he started looking at that and he didn't quite understand, and then the gears got turning. And so what he did is he built a deck to fight against Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger.
Yeah.
And the next week he went in with his deck, and I think it was an Azorius deck, so it was blue and white. And the first person he was playing against was, of course, playing Ulamog, and Ulamog came out, and he didn't react to it, like he used to. He's like, okay, Ulamog came out, 2 permanents got destroyed. That's fine. Yeah, and then he went to attack. And yeah, he was like, okay, that's fine. He milled his 20 cards and he put up a blocker. And then he said, before damage, turn to Frog. And he had that little smirk on his face. And the other person just had that ashen look on their face like, oh my God. They conceded. Not the game. They conceded the match. They knew that he had figured out something that they had never even thought of as a possibility. So he was just he really got into that, and that's when he started getting into looking at the various metas, that what were people playing, how do you combat these problematic cards in those different formats. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into problematic cards in problematic commanders. Uh, and we've got our top 4 here. And the number 4 is
Eureka, the Tiger's Shadow. This is a interesting card. So you say, okay, I'll let that 1/1 come through, and you just basically play that in Commander for free.
Yeah. So yeah, and whenever ninja, you reveal the top card of your library, you put that card into your hand, and the opponents lose life. I mean, it's just there. It gets around commander tax. It gets around all of the kind of the checks that are put in place in commander.
Mm-hmm.
Now another one that does the same thing is
The Locust God. It makes a bunch of insects with haste. They can ping you like crazy.
yeah, and of course when it dies, it goes back to your hand, and you don't have to pay the commander tax to bring it back out. So any
Mm-hmm.
sort of wheel effects, anything where you're drawing lots of cards. You're making lots of these insects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, now, the another commander that is very annoying, very problematic, is Corvold. Okay, so you look at Corvold and it's like, okay, that's not too bad. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, you put a 1/1 counter on it. But what are some super easy permanents to sacrifice?
Land.
No. Treasures.
Treasures.
And there is tons of treasures now in the game. So yeah, you build up a bunch of treasure and you go, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to go in and attack. Oh, Corvold's not being blocked. All right, let me sacrifice these treasures. Boom! All of a sudden, yeah, Corvold's huge, and I mean, it's very, it's a very quick commander, a very quick damage, uh, and another one that is very similar in one respect is Calamax. Yeah, when the Calamax Precon deck came out, it wasn't too awfully bad.
I tried it and
it was not all that fun. But you know, then you get to taking a look at Calamax, and then you start figuring out, okay, how can I find a way around some of this stuff? And it has that whenever you copy an instant spell, put a 1/1 counter on Calamax. Well, what if you have Fork? Fork is one of those instant spells that copies itself. And, or, you create a copy of a spell that you cast. You can copy itself, put a 1/1 counter on it, copy it, copy the copy, put another 1/1 counter, copy the copy, and you just keep going. And so you're swinging with a Calamax that's 400/400. Yeah, it's a 400/400 Calamax. So these commanders are definitely our top ones for being leery of, okay, what's your deck, how are you playing, but I mean, there's times that you just got to play. You got to play the game. Maybe that's the only commander they've got. Maybe they're really hip to do this, but you know that they're in it to basically control the game and make sure that they have fun and no one else does. So
to win it.
yeah. So now all of these commanders die to removal, but then you just kind of cast them again. So what you want to do is you want a way to immobilize the commander. So it is still out on the battlefield and it just doesn't
do anything.
So how do you do that?
Well, enchantments.
Okay. So we've got our top 10 list of enchantments to immobilize commanders. Now, our number 10, we've got a 6-way tie. Mainly because they all pretty much do the same thing. So the first one is
Amphibian Downpour.
Okay. Now this one, it turns it into a 1/1. You can flash it, and it's got Storm, so it's got some cool abilities on it, but still, it turns it into a 1/1. We also have Eaten by Piranha. This one's very flavorful. I mean, your commander gets eaten up. It's turned into a skeleton. Yeah, that's kind of cool. That's fun.
Yeah.
And it's a 1/1. There's also
it's a Frogify.
Yeah, turns it into a 1/1 frog. Okay. We also have got
Mina's Transmutation.
Okay. Enchant creature, loses all abilities.
And it's a 1/1.
All right. Let's see. There's also Utter Insignificance. Yeah.
Flash. Enchant creature loses all abilities and becomes a 1/1.
Yep. And then our final one in our top 10, or our number 10, is Witness Protection. So it's an enchant creature, loses all abilities. It's 1/1, basically. So these are nice. They work, but in the case of like Corvold, if it had a bunch of 1/1 counters on it, you turn it into a creature that's base power 1/1. It still has the 1/1 counters on it, so it's still a big creature. It can still slam you for commander damage. So these work. They're okay. But if you can, with one of these, what you want to do is you want to follow it up with something to tap them down with. You tap the creature so it can't attack, can't untap, can't block, and then you let your opponent try to figure out how they're going to remove that enchantment. Maybe they have a murder themselves, and then they can murder their own commander, and then cast it again. So yeah, that kind of works, I think.
Yeah.
But okay, so slightly better. Rhino is putting this into a deck.
Yeah. It is Mystic and Subdual. Yeah, it's Flash. And enchanted creature gets -2, -0, and loses all abilities.
So, that's pretty good. I mean, a lot of commanders have a low power, so this might knock them down to 0, like Eureka.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a 0/3 in that case. So you can't do any damage. The others, okay, it turns them into a 2/4. Yeah, that's not quite as good, but still, it's got flash. It can be a surprise, and it does some work. Okay, so number 8 is one that should we get Rhino to pronounce this?
Ichthyomorphis.
Ichthyomorphis. So you enchant the creature, it loses all abilities, and becomes a 0/1. So yeah, they could swing with it, and you just go, oh, I'll let the 0 through. But if they block with it, yeah, it's easy to destroy. You can shock it, whatever. So that is our number 8. And one thing you might be realizing is so far all these cards are
blue.
Well, is there anything other than blue?
Yes.
Okay, number 7 is reprobation.
Reprobation.
Okay, so it's like the Ichthyomorphis. It loses all abilities. It becomes a coward. It's a 0/1 coward instead of a 0/1 fish. So it's basically the same thing, but it's in white.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is that the only color left?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. You also have a nice one in green, and that is
Lignify. It becomes a 0/4
tree. With no abilities, and we've put this in some decks, and it's been pretty fun.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, at least it becomes a reasonable blocker. People aren't necessarily as upset with this because hey, it'll block some stuff. But we want to, if you want to take it a step further, of course, you got to go into blue again with Deep Freeze.
Now, enchanted creature has base power and toughness 0/4.
And
is a defender.
Yeah, so it's a wall, so it can't attack. So that's kind of nice. That kind of limits its abilities. And so that was our number 5. Now we've got 4 more to go. And before we get into the top 4, we want to show you some
Use
things that you might not want to do. Uh, Very similar in many respects is Kenris transformation.
yeah. Yeah, you get to draw a card, but mm, it's a 3/3. And it's their commander.
Yeah, so it's still their commander, and when they swing with it, you probably don't want to block it because you don't want that that transformation to fall off. Yeah, I mean it's a regular creature, so you could potentially just chump block it, but I mean they could be hitting you with a 3/3 commander, and if they get some counters on it or something, then that could become a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
we don't recommend this. Uh, there's also another one in blue that we don't recommend, and that is
Into deep.
okay. So it's got split second, so you can immediately stop them from using any other abilities, and it turns their commander into a clue token, which they can then, for 2, sacrifice it and
And
draw a
draw
card.
R.
Draw a card. So it's like you're helping them. So we don't like that one at all. So yeah, those are immobilizers to a certain degree, but they're not very good for immobilizing a commander. So number 4. Let Rhino tell you about number 4.
Dark Steel Mutation. Okay. This one is really good. Um, it becomes a 0/1, but is indestructible and loses all
Abilities.
abilities.
So they have a 0/1 insect that's indestructible, so they can't do the murder on their own creature. You can't do any destroy effects. Yeah, you can blink it, things like that. Pop it back to your hand, and you can do that with a lot of these things. So these aren't overly oppressive, but in decks that don't have a lot of that stuff, yeah, really focused on doing one thing, this could be problematic. Now, if they have a Voltron strategy in their deck where they're adding swords and stuff like that, you have a 0/1 indestructible uh, insect with multiple swords put on it and counters and things, and then it's still their commander, so it can still beat you to death. Uh,
Yeah.
but if you don't want it to beat you to death, then you have
Imprison the moon.
okay, so what this does is it turns it into
a land.
and then they can tap their commander for 1 colorless. And a lot of decks would have a big problem with this because you don't have, ways of animating lands in a lot of decks. And let's see, yeah, they don't turn the land into a creature, and it's like, so this can really, really slow them down quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Until they get an enchantment removal out. And really, all commander decks should have enchantment removal in it somehow. Um, and but it you can't use murder on it because it's a land. So this makes it really, really difficult. Now, that's our number 3. Number 2. Number 2 just came out recently.
Let's stop cold.
Um, and this has flash.
It loses all abilities, and it taps it.
And it doesn't untap
during the untap step.
So the kind of the neat thing about this is, I mean, it really locks them down. Uh, because if they wanted to swing with it, they'd have to be able to untap it, and a lot of decks don't have untap effects. Uh,
Yeah.
so they're waiting around for enchantment removal, some sort of board wipe or something like that. I mean, it's still a creature, it's still their commander, uh, but it really, really uh, locks it down. Now, before we get to number one, we want to go over some of the worst immobilizers. And we've seen these happen in many decks or many games. And they just make the game feel bad. And the first one is Nevermore.
Nevermore is when it enters the battlefield,
You
the
name a
name
card.
card, the name card can't be cast.
So and it's like, okay, I play Nevermore and I say Corvald the Cursed Fae. And, or no, Corvald Fae Cursed King. Uh, and then all of a sudden, anybody that's running that can't cast it. They could potentially cheat it out on the battlefield somehow, but that's kind of difficult to do. And this just locks out bringing out that commander until this is completely removed. So you have to have board wipes that come through, stuff like that, to free things up. Uh, Most hated creature is
Drainage Magistrate.
so your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. Okay.
So it logs down flashback.
Any graveyard strategies, anything from the command zone. I mean, this is an expensive card, and there's a good reason why it's expensive because they use that a lot in like competitive commander. This is not for a casual game at all. All right. The other one that we want to talk about that you don't want to do is Overwhelming Splendor. Okay, you're enchanting a player. This turns all their creatures, everything, into 1/1s with no abilities that aren't mana abilities. This is the epitome of feel bad. You're locking them down. You're saying, I don't want you to have fun anymore. So we don't like this at all. I mean, will it immobilize the commander? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it really, really is a bad feel. So number one.
The number one is Helis Punishment.
Okay. So what makes this so good?
Well, you enchant a creature.
Loses all abilities. Can't attack or block. But
it has 4 task counters on it. So you have 4 turns until
it releases.
Yeah.
So it's got an automatic release on it. So that's kind of nice. That means that, okay, and you generally do this if it's like turn 4 and they're about ready to, they're playing competitive commander and everybody else is playing casual. You go, oh, no, let's slow you down. And this doesn't feel quite as bad because, hey, it's going to come off. Now, can you still bounce it? Yep. Can you still murder it? Yep. Can you still blink it? Yep. You can still do all of those things. So it doesn't feel quite as bad, but it still will immobilize the commander until they get some sort of removal thing in place. And if they don't have that, then it clears up after 4 turns. So this is what we consider to be our number one commander immobilizer. All the others are fine. They all work. Uh, and really, we don't want you to put these in every deck. But if you have people that come in and play, and we have plenty of stories of people that come in and
Oh yeah.
play, and they want to have fun, and they don't want anybody else to have fun. And you know, those are the worst games to play in. If you have a cards like this in there where you can, basically teach them a lesson. It's like, oh, you don't want anybody to have fun? Well, let's make it so you don't have fun, and see how the game works now. Uh, and we've done that to people, and they've learned their lesson. So that's good. Before we let you go, make sure you
Mm-hmm.
do a like, share,
Sure.
subscribe. Look at our Patreon.
Yeah.
And tell us in the comments what cards do you use to immobilize commanders? Do you just do basic removal, or do you do something else? Uh, let's see. Why don't you close it out?
Well, I want to thank you for watching this video. I hope you choose the smart commander and
Oh, fun ones.
fun ones. And I have more videos coming out soon. So until then, Rhino out.